Have you ever wondered why some really brilliant, highly accomplished people, doctors, engineers, successful business owners, why they often just hit a wall or sometimes even fail spectacularly when they try trading?
Yeah.
They might know the markets, have all the data, but still they struggle. It's quite a thing, especially when you hear stats like, 95% of futures traders lose everything in their first year. What's really going on there?
Well, what's going on, this is what Mark Douglas nails so well in his book, Trading in the Zone. It's this really profound truth. This deep dive we're doing, it isn't about finding the next, hot trading system.
Right.
It's about getting this often overlooked idea. The real key, the consistent key to success in trading, it's not market analysis. It's the trader's mindset. The ones who consistently win, they just think differently.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're going through those crucial early parts of Douglas's work. The introduction, chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4.
The foundations.
Exactly. Our mission here is to figure out why our normal way of thinking often trips us up in the markets and what it really means to think like a trader. Think of it as a shortcut to understanding that psychological edge.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we flagged this mindset difference as key. But where did this whole idea even surface? To really get Douglas, maybe we should quickly trace how market analysis itself changed over time. Let's start with the old school, fundamental analysis.
Right, the classic approach.
This was all about predicting future prices by looking at, everything, right? Interest rates, company balance sheets, economic data, even the weather sometimes. It sounds totally logical, like you could just crunch the numbers and win.
It does sound logical, but what's fascinating is the flaw Douglas points out right away. Fundamental analysis, even with all its complex models, it rarely accounts for the actual traders themselves as a variable.
The human element.
Exactly. Prices move because people are acting on their beliefs and expectations, and often that's driven by emotion, not just pure logic. This creates what Douglas calls a reality gap. A gap between what the numbers say should happen and what actually is happening. You could be right, fundamentally, long term, but the emotional swings could knock you out way before that.
Okay, so fundamental analysis had this reality gap. The math said one thing, people did another. How did traders deal with that? Did they just throw up their hands?
Yeah.
Or did something new emerge, which I guess led towards technical analysis?
Precisely. Technical analysts, they figured something out that took the mainstream market, generations to really grasp. They realized that while any single trade outcome might seem random, collective human behavior in the market forms patterns.
Patterns you can see.
Observable, quantifiable, and repeatable patterns. Technical analysis basically said, let's focus on what the market is doing right now. Price action, volume. It offers a way statistically to anticipate what's likely to happen next. It closed that reality gap by focusing on the what is, not the what should be. And boom, suddenly you've got almost unlimited opportunities any time frame.
Right, that makes sense. Technical analysis opens up this world of opportunity. But then, why does Douglas push for yet another shift, this shift to mental analysis? What problem is left? He talks about a psychological gap.
Yeah.
That disconnect between, understanding the market intellectually and actually making consistent money from it. I think a lot of us can relate to seeing a perfect setup on a chart, knowing exactly what's likely to happen, but then just freezing up, agonizing, maybe not taking the trade, and watching it play out perfectly without you. Ouch.
It really makes you ask, doesn't it? Is it about being smarter, having better analysis? Is that what separates the winners? And Douglas says emphatically, no. No. He points out, many market failures are incredibly intelligent people, successful in other areas. The real difference, he argues, is a unique mindset, a specific set of attitudes that lets them stay disciplined, focused, confident, even when things go wrong. This mindset shields them from the common fears and mistakes that plague almost everyone else.
That's a fascinating paradox. Trading is risky inherently. Every single trade, the outcome is uncertain. You could lose.
Yeah.
But most traders, deep down, they don't truly accept that risk. Douglas draws this really sharp line. Anyone can take a risk, place a trade. But fully accepting the consequences means doing it without that knot in your stomach, without the emotional discomfort. If you feel that fear, you haven't truly accepted the risk.
And he identifies 4 big ones, the primary trading fears.
Right.
Fear of being wrong, fear of losing money, fear of missing out FOMO, and fear of leaving money on the table, like closing a winner too soon. When you're operating from fear, your focus just narrows right down onto the threat. You start blocking out other market information, possibilities. You might even ignore your own rules. The market itself, it's neutral. It's just data. It's your perception, your fear that makes it painful and causes you to make errors. self-generated errors.
So this leads us to the choice Douglas lays out. You can either spiral down what he calls the black hole of analysis, constantly searching for more information to try and eliminate risk, which just leads to frustration.
An endless quest.
Or the other path. Learn to redefine how you think about trading so you can genuinely accept the risk. If you do that, the fear dissolves and you don't need to hesitate or rationalize or just cross your fingers and hope. He really champions that second path.
Definitely.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly.
Right.
Why is trading so attractive anyway? What pulls people in so strongly? Douglas mentions the unlimited freedom of creative expression.
Yeah, that's a big one.
A kind of freedom we often don't get in regular life.
Yeah.
He even talks about someone calculating like billions of possible bond spread combinations, add timing, options. The ways to trade are virtually infinite.
But here's the catch, the paradox again. That very freedom, the lack of external rules and boundaries, that's what creates huge psychological challenges. Think about it. Our whole upbringing, society, it's built on structure, rules, limits. We're often taught to suppress our natural impulses.
Right.
So you have this internal conflict. We're conditioned for structure, but the market offers total freedom. That clash makes trading uniquely difficult psychologically.
And this conflict, especially what Douglas calls the backlog of denied impulses from childhood, that creates real dangers in trading, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. He uses that example of the toddler reaching for something fragile like a vase that the parent shouts, "No, don't touch," maybe out of fear. That sharp denial of the child's natural curiosity, their impulse to explore, it creates emotional pain. Douglas suggests this creates sort of mental vacuums or imbalances. If these denied impulses aren't resolved, they build up. And later, they can pop up as compulsive behaviors, addictions, things that really wreck your focus and discipline when you need it most, like in trading.
That really paints a picture. But it leads to a tricky question. With no external rules in trading, what stops us from just, running wild, doing destructive things? Because the trading environment is so different from society, or even games like poker or blackjack.
That's a great point. In blackjack, you have to define your risk up front, each hand. There's a clear start and end. It forces you to be an active loser. If you want to keep playing after a loss, you have to consciously decide to put more money in.
Right, you have to act.
But the market, it doesn't have a formal end. It won't force you out of a losing trade, so it's incredibly easy to become a passive loser. You just sit there, maybe hoping, doing nothing, while your losses mount. The market can take everything if you just let it. This shows why you absolutely need internal structure, because the market gives you none.
And that lack of external structure, it creates these specific psychological problems Douglas highlights. First off, the unwillingness to create rules for ourselves.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive.
It really is. We resist rules.
Yeah.
We set ourselves because we've spent our lives pushing against rules others set for us. Douglas says it often takes, and I quote, a great deal of pain and suffering before a trader finally commits to a disciplined set of self-imposed rules.
And linked to that is the failure to take responsibility. We want the freedom the market offers, the freedom to choose, but we often resist fully accepting responsibility for the outcome of those choices.
How does that show up?
Well, he talks about random trades that aren't really planned well. It's a way to dodge responsibility. If you win, hey, you can find some reason why you were smart. If you lose, oh, it's some random event, something unpredictable, not your fault.
Right. Blame the market.
Exactly. But the paradox is the market does have patterns. Consistent results are possible, but only if you adopt a disciplined approach where you own every single outcome, win or lose.
Then there's the addiction to random rewards. This one really jumped out at me. He uses this analogy, I think it was a monkey study.
That's right.
About how unexpected wins, those surprise windfalls, they trigger these euphoria-inducing chemicals. It's like endlessly scrolling social media, maybe. You get that random dopamine hit, keeps you hooked, even if it's not really productive.
It's exactly like that.
Yeah.
And that addiction can totally bypass your rational brain, your plans, your self-control. It makes it incredibly hard to stick to your rules or even stop trading when you know you should, especially after a lucky streak.
And the last big problem area, external versus internal control.
This is fundamental.
In everyday life, we learn to influence, maybe even manipulate our environment to get what we need or want. But the market, Douglas calls it a psychological wilderness. It doesn't care about you or what you want.
It's completely indifferent. So success isn't about controlling the market. It's about controlling yourself, your perceptions, your behavior. You have to train yourself to see market information objectively and build an internal framework that ensures you always act in your own best interest, no matter what the market throws at you.
Which brings us back.
Which really brings us full circle, doesn't it? It all boils down to this cornerstone concept, taking responsibility. Douglas is crystal clear. You have to accept, like deep in your bones, that your trading success or failure is entirely self-generated.
Yeah, he says the consistently successful trader you want to become isn't out there somewhere to be found. It's a future projection of yourself that you have to actively create. And the way you create it is by shaping your mental environment, using your beliefs and attitudes like Clay, the aim, to pretty much eliminate fear and recklessness so you can trade cleanly. It's so counterintuitive, but he insists that the right attitude actually produces better results than even brilliant analysis. He asks you to think about it. Who would you rather manage your money? A genius analyst who's constantly fighting fear and making impulsive mistakes, or someone with a maybe simpler method, but a rock-solid, fearless mindset?
The choice becomes obvious, right?
Yeah.
And Douglas points out this curious anomaly with novice traders. They often start out kind of carefree, fearless, almost like they're in the zone naturally, usually because they get lucky with a few early wins.
Beginner's luck.
Exactly. They're acting instinctively, no fear holding them back. But it's not a real winning attitude yet, it's just luck. And this misunderstanding sets them up for a huge fall, emotionally and financially, as soon as those inevitable losses start hitting. The real zone in trading comes from deep acceptance of risk, not from just feeling good because you got lucky.
So what happens when that beginner's luck runs out? Or really, for any of us, when we take a loss? What's the immediate, almost universal reaction?
Blame the market. And he draws this direct line back to childhood. We all had times where we felt powerless, where things we wanted were denied by someone or something else, parents, rules, whatever. It creates feelings of pain, maybe even feeling betrayed. That same pattern plays out in trading. We blame the market, even though it's totally impersonal, a zero-sum game. It owes us nothing. If you find yourself blaming the market at all, it's a sign you haven't truly accepted responsibility. You're still stuck in that victim mode.
And Douglas says this failure to take full responsibility creates two huge psychological roadblocks.
Yeah.
First, you basically set yourself up in an adversarial relationship with the market, which is crazy because then you can't see the opportunities it's constantly offering.
He's fighting it instead of flowing with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And second, you trick yourself into thinking that the solution to your trading problems is just more market analysis, more information, when the real issue is your own attitudes, your perspective. It's looking in the wrong place for the fix.
This often leads traders into what he calls the revenge trap. They start learning more about the market, not really to win systematically, but more to avoid the pain of losing, or maybe to beat the market, prove something.
Oh.
Yeah. And this creates this irreconcilable dilemma. The more they learn, paradoxically, the less able they are to actually pull the trigger on trades. They hesitate, they second guess constantly, because deep down, the fear is still there, unresolved, even with all that knowledge.
Wow, that sounds like a truly vicious cycle. More learning leads to higher expectations.
Which leads to more pain when the market inevitably does something unexpected.
Which makes you feel like you need to learn even more.
Exactly. Round and round it goes until the trader either quits entirely, totally burnt out, or finally has that light bulb moment and realizes the problem isn't the market, it's their own internal perspective.
Douglas actually puts traders into three main buckets.
What? He does. You've got your consistent losers. Pretty self-explanatory. Then the biggest group, maybe 40–50% of active traders. The boom and busters. These folks do figure out how to make money, sometimes quite a lot. But crucially, they haven't learned how to keep it. They get caught up in euphoria after wins over confidence, taking on too much risk, then freezing when the market turns. Or they fall into self-sabotage, often because of unconscious conflicts about whether they deserve to win, leading to silly, costly mistakes.
Then the third group.
The consistent winners. Less than 10%, he estimates. They've mastered both sides, making money and keeping it, because they've mastered themselves.
Which brings us right back to that core powerful idea. The market doesn't create your attitude. It doesn't make you feel fear or euphoria. It just acts as a mirror.
Perfectly put. It reflects what's already inside you. Blaming the market might feel better for a second, shields you from self-criticism, but it stops you from learning the real lessons. Douglas makes a great point that leaving money on the table often feels worse than taking a loss.
Why is that?
Because with leaving money on the table, there's absolutely no one else to blame. It's clearly your decision, your hesitation, or your early exit. It forces you to confront your own role. You are responsible for everything that happens as a result of your trading. Developing that winning attitude, he argues, it's actually the most direct, most efficient path to figuring out what you need to do to succeed.
Okay, so let's really nail this down. Consistency.
Mm.
It's the holy grail for traders, right? But Douglas says consistency isn't about what the market is doing.
No.
It's about how you think about what you do, and maybe even more importantly, how you are thinking when you're doing it. Your state of mind in the moment.
Exactly. He says consistency, just like happiness, it's a state of mind. It flows naturally from your core beliefs and attitudes. You can't try to be consistent. If you feel like you're trying, it just means there's internal resistance, some conflict going on.
Right. True consistency just happens when you're aligned.
When you're in the flow, yeah. Unhindered by that internal noise.
And when you are trying to force things, trying to get what you want or expect from the market, that's when your mental defenses kick in.
Yep. Your mind starts filtering information to protect you from potential emotional pain. You might block out signals that contradict your position or only see data that confirms what you want to see.
So you distort reality, basically.
You do, and that takes you right out of the flow of actual opportunities happening in the market and drops you straight into that miserable place of could have, should have, would have.
Ugh, we've all been there.
The ultimate way out of this cycle, Douglas insists, is to learn to accept the risk. And again, that means accepting the consequences, whatever they may be, without fear, without emotional upset. When you can do that, your whole relationship with market information changes. It stops feeling threatening. You can just see it objectively.
That's a huge shift. He uses an analogy that I found really helpful. Our mental environment is like software code.
Right, the internal program.
And most people start trading with flawed code, faulty assumptions, beliefs that contradict each other about how trading works. And just like software, one tiny error in that code can mess up the whole system's performance.
And he describes that aha moment, that sudden flash of insight when you identify one of those flawed beliefs and you replace it. It leads to this massive internal shift. And afterwards, the new belief feels so simple, so obvious.
But knowing isn't enough, right?
Crucially, no. He makes a very clear distinction between awareness, knowing something intellectually, and true belief, internalizing it so deeply that it changes how you automatically perceive and act. He uses that powerful example of his client with the snake phobia.
Oh yeah, the snakes.
The client knew intellectually that certain snakes weren't dangerous, but the phobia, the deep-seated belief, still triggered paralyzing fear. Awareness alone couldn't overcome the flawed code. You have to actually decharge the old belief and install the new one until it becomes second nature.
So it really comes down to reprogramming yourself. Like that line from Cool Hand Luke he mentions. A lot of traders get metaphorically killed trying to beat the market, fight it.
Instead of just getting their mind right, accepting the market for what it is and learning to flow with it.
Wow. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here in this deep dive. From how market analysis evolved, the surprising dangers hidden in trading's freedom, and landing on this absolute cornerstone, taking total personal responsibility. It's become really clear from these early chapters of Douglas's work that consistent trading success is fundamentally an internal game.
It really is. That mirror analogy holds up perfectly. The market just reflects your internal state right back at you. If you want to change the reflection, if you want to move from those boom and bust cycles to a steadily climbing equity curve, you have to work on the inside. Align your mind to truly accept risk. Cultivate that fearless discipline.
So thinking about this for yourself, for everyone listening, if consistency really is a state of mind, what specific beliefs or attitudes might you need to look at? What needs recalibrating inside you to dial down the fear and really get into that trading zone?
Maybe go back and look at that attitude survey in the preface of the book. See if your answers feel different now after thinking through these ideas. And here's a final thought to maybe mull over. If you could truly, fully accept the uncertainty of every single trade, let go of needing to be right, let go of trying to control the outcome, what new possibilities might that open up for your trading? Today, we're wrestling with something pretty fundamental, something many of us face, really, whether it's in the markets or just navigating life's complex systems. It's that battle inside our own heads.
Yeah, our mission for this deep dive is to get into the psychology behind successful trading. We're really focusing on how perception, how our beliefs actually shape our experience in the market. And we're pulling some really powerful stuff from chapters 5 to 8 of your source material here. It actually starts with this. Well, it's a pretty grim story, but very relevant. It's about a character named Luke. in prison. He tried escaping twice, you know. The guards were just determined to break him. They worked him incredibly hard, beat him, kept asking him, "Have you got your mind right yet, Luke?" And eventually, after just immense suffering, he says, yes, he has. But, you know, true to his nature, he tries one more escape. And this time, they kill him.
Now, like Luke, a lot of traders, maybe without even realizing it, are trying to beat the market, trying to force it to do what they want. And just like Luke, they often end up trapped, right? Stuck in these patterns of self-sabotage, leading to pretty devastating losses, both financial and emotional. But the thing is, there are easier ways, much more satisfying ways to engage with the market. It really boils down to this idea of getting our minds right.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because the market itself, it doesn't create pain. Or happiness, for that matter. It's just information, a neutral flow. It's our own mental setup, our framework that dictates how we perceive it, how we feel, and ultimately, you know, how well we can act on it. The real goal, then, is to see those opportunities without feeling threatened.
Okay, so that's the key, taking the threat out of the information. But how do the pros actually do that? If most people see potential loss and feel fear, how do professionals bypass that? It sounds almost inhuman.
Well, it's because they genuinely don't perceive market information as painful. Not in the same way. So those defense mechanisms we all have, conscious or subconscious, they don't activate. There's nothing to defend against, you see. And that lets them see things, do things that honestly mystify everyone else. They get into the flow and this is crucial, the best ones know when they're not in it and they compensate. They scale back, maybe even just stop trading for a bit.
Right. It sounds like we almost need to debug our own mental software. How does that even work? How does our mental energy create perception? Why is this so basic to trading success?
Okay, so think about it like this. Everything outside of us, right, generates information. That information hits our senses as a kind of energy. Our nervous system takes that energy, transforms it into electrical impulses, and then stores it internally. These are what the source calls energy structures. Think memories, distinctions we've learned, beliefs we hold. They literally structure how we perceive reality. They become our filters.
So energy structures, like thought structured by language or even dreams, they don't take up physical space.
Exactly. That's the mind-blowing part from the source. They exist as energy, and if they don't take up space...
Then our capacity for learning, for storing these things, is basically unlimited.
Unlimited storage, yes. But here's the catch. Storage capacity isn't the same as learning capacity. Those very internal energy structures, our memories, our beliefs, they actually end up limiting what we perceive. They can make huge chunks of available information literally invisible to us if it doesn't match our existing map.
That idea of a perceptual closed loop, it's really striking. I mean, think about the first time you ever looked at a price chart. What did you even see?
Right. Probably it's just lines going up and down.
And a jumble. Exactly. Undifferentiated information. But then you learn to make distinctions, right? Trends, support, resistance, volume. And suddenly, those same lines, they start showing patterns, opportunities. The information was always there, but it was invisible until you learned how to see it.
That's it, precisely. As the source says, people see what they've learned to see. Everything else, invisible.
Okay, let's make this even clearer with another example from the source. The one about the kid and the dog. So a young child sees a dog for the first time. Maybe they're just curious, innocent, right? Wants to pet it.
Yeah, full of wonder, probably.
But then the dog bites the child. A really traumatic event creates this intensely painful, negatively charged memory.
And what happens next is automatic, unconscious. It's the power of association. From then on, any dog, even the friendliest little puppy wagging its tail, triggers fear in that child.
Why? Because the mind instantly links the current sight and sound, any dog, back to that original painful memory.
Exactly. It's involuntary, like your heartbeat. The child isn't consciously deciding to be scared. They're projecting that internal pain onto the external dog, making it seem threatening, regardless of the reality.
Okay, I see the connection now. How does this map onto trading?
Well, think about a trader who's just had a string of losses. They hesitate, right? They see risk everywhere, even on a perfectly good setup.
Versus the trader on a winning streak who gets maybe overconfident, sees less risk than is actually there.
Precisely. The market signal, the setup, might be identical in both cases. But the trader's internal state, rooted in those recent outcomes, completely dictates how they perceive the risk.
So the market really is neutral. The pain, the threat, it comes entirely from how we interpret the information.
Driven by our beliefs and that automatic association process. Gaining conscious control over that. That's the key to consistency.
That's a huge distinction. The average trader's risk perception is bouncing around based on their last few trades, but the best traders, they seem immune to that. What's the secret there? How do they bridge that gap?
The secret, according to the source, is this incredibly strong, almost unshakable belief. It's a belief in an uncertain outcome, but with an edge in your favor. This uncertainty principle is absolutely fundamental.
Uncertainty principle.
This belief literally stops their minds from associating the now moment, this current trade setup, with the outcomes of past trades. It frees them from rigid expectations. They genuinely believe anything can happen.
And that phrase, making yourself available, what does that mean in practice? Does it mean accepting your perception is limited, being open to what the market's actually offering, not just what you hope or expect?
That's exactly it. Think about it. Fear of being wrong, for example. If a clear trend develops against your position, that fear can make the trend itself invisible to you.
Because acknowledging it confirms you're wrong, which is painful.
Right. You only perceive what you've learned to perceive or what you're comfortable perceiving. Fear blocks learning, blocks seeing those opportunities or threats that contradict your current stance.
There's a great story in the source about this anything can happen idea. The technical analyst and the old chairman in the soybean pit.
Oh yeah, that's a classic. Tells you everything.
So the analyst is super confident explaining his charts, his support levels, says the market will stop right here at the day's low.
Absolutely certain, based on his analysis, right?
Right. And the market trickles down to that exact point. Then the old grizzled chairman just looks over and says, that's bullshit, picks up the phone.
Sells 2 million bushels, just like that, at the market.
Boom. Price drops 10 cents in 30 seconds. And the chairman just calmly asks, now where did you say it was going to stop? If I can do that, anyone can.
The implication there is just profound. It takes only one other trader, anywhere in the world, with enough conviction or size to completely negate whatever your analysis says, whatever you think is certain.
That's the hard reality.
It is.
And that's why the best traders always predefine their risk before they even get in. They cut losses without thinking twice if the market invalidates their idea. They have systematic ways to take profits. Why? Because they truly believe anything can happen. They account for the unknowns.
Whereas the typical trader, often they think they know what's going to happen next. And that belief, that need for certainty, is the root cause of almost every single trading error. Our beliefs are incredibly powerful. They shape our reality. And the most effective beliefs you can possibly install, the one that aligns with truth, it's anything can happen.
Okay, so if anything can happen, if it's fundamentally uncertain, how do you build consistency? It sounds like a paradox. The answer seems to be thinking in probabilities. How does that work?
Yeah, it does sound contradictory at first, doesn't it? But look at casinos. They make consistent profits day in, day out, from events that are purely random at the individual level, like a spin of the roulette wheel or a hand of blackjack.
How? Because they have an edge, right, a small statistical advantage over the player.
Exactly. Maybe it's 4.5% in blackjack, whatever. They have that edge, and they have a huge sample size, countless hands being played. They know they can't predict the outcome of any one hand, but over thousands of hands, their edge will play out predictably.
Ah, okay. So probabilistic thinking needs two layers of belief working together.
Right.
At the micro level, the individual trade or hand, you have to fully accept and believe in its uncertainty. Unknown variables mean you just can't know the outcome for sure.
Correct. Complete acceptance of uncertainty on that micro level.
But then at the macro level, over a large series of trades, you need to believe in the predictability of the outcome because your edge gives you a statistical favor.
That's the casino mindset. The best traders adopt it fully. They don't try to predict trade number 5 or trade number 27. They don't get emotionally wound up in any single outcome. Their focus is just on executing their edge consistently, again and again, over a large sample of trades. They accept they don't know what's next, and crucially, they realize they don't need to know to make money consistently.
And connecting that straight to trading, your analysis gives you an edge. Those are your known variables. But the unknown variables, that's every other trader out there.
Everyone else who could potentially act and move the price.
Since you can't possibly know what they'll all do, every single trade is statistically independent and has an uncertain outcome.
Remember Bob, the CTA from the source, he understood probability intellectually. He knew the concepts.
Yeah, but he didn't operate from that belief, did he?
Not at all. He put on a trade, felt sure it would work. When it went slightly against him, he got angry, felt betrayed by the market, and bailed out. Almost to, punish the market. Almost immediately after he got out, it ripped 500 points in his original direction. He missed a huge winner because he couldn't handle that momentary uncertainty. He understood probability, but he didn't accept it deep down.
Wow. That highlights how damaging that need to be right really is.
Yeah.
Seems like unsuccessful traders get obsessed with more and more analysis because they're chasing certainty.
They're desperately trying to create certainty where none exists. It's completely ironic, actually.
How so?
Because if they could just fully accept that certainty doesn't exist in predicting the next moment, they'd actually gain the only certainty that is available.
Yeah.
The certainty that certainty isn't possible.
Huh. Accepting uncertainty gives you certainty about uncertainty.
Exactly. And that acceptance is incredibly freeing. It ends the frustration, the anger, the typical errors that come from needing to be right. The internal conflict just dissolves.
Which explains that dilemma the typical trader faces with defining risk. If you're convinced you're right about this trade,
why would you define your risk? Why plan for being wrong?
Because being wrong feels too painful. Right. It connects to maybe every other time you felt like a failure. So you ignore conflicting signals. You get trapped.
But the probability thinker avoids that completely. They aren't trading from a right or wrong perspective on any single trade. A loss isn't personal. It's just data. One flip of the coin in a long series. Their expectations are neutral, open.
Okay, let's dig into expectations then. Why are unrealistic expectations so destructive for a trader?
Well, what are expectations? They're mental pictures, right? Representations of what we believe the future should look like, feel like, based on what we think we know. Now, when reality doesn't match that picture, when our expectations aren't met, what's the universal human response?
Emotional pain, disappointment, anger, frustration, regret.
Exactly. And then our pain avoidance mechanisms kick in. Consciously, we might rationalize. Subconsciously, our minds might actually distort or even block our perception of market information that contradicts what we expected, all to try and shield us from that pain.
So like ignoring a clear trend that's screaming you're on the wrong side of the market. The trend is real. It's happening.
But your ability to perceive it diminishes or vanishes because acknowledging it would trigger that pain of being wrong, of having your expectations shattered. You only see it clearly later, after the fact, when the damage is done and there's nothing left to protect you from.
It keeps coming back to this. Market information is neutral. Upticks, downticks. That's it.
The threat, the pain, comes solely from our interpretation, filtered through our expectations. If there's genuinely nothing at stake, meaning no rigid expectation tied to the outcome, then you can perceive the information objectively. It loses its emotional charge.
Which leads to this core paradox the source really emphasizes for traders. You need to be rigid in your rules, but flexible in your expectations. Why is that specific combination so vital?
It's vital because rigidity in your rules, your methodology, your risk management creates self-trust. In an environment like the market, which has very few boundaries, those rules give you structure, a sense of safety. But flexibility in your expectations, that's what allows you to perceive the market objectively, clearly as it is, moment by moment, without projecting your hopes or fears onto it. And this whole mindset, this probabilistic approach, is really built on fully internalizing 5 fundamental truths about the market.
Okay, what are they?
1, anything can happen. Truly anything. 2, you don't need to know what's going to happen next to make money consistently.
Right, because of the edge over a series.
Exactly. 3, there is a random distribution between wins and losses for any given edge or system. You don't know when the wins or losses will occur. 4, an edge is nothing more than an indication of higher probability of one thing happening over another. Not a guarantee, just higher odds. And 5, every single moment in the market is unique. Even if it looks like a past setup, the forces acting on it now are different because the participants are different.
So, if you really truly integrate those 5 truths, how does that change things? How does it neutralize the emotional risk and create that carefree state of mind the source talks about? It sounds almost Zen-in.
It feels that way because if you genuinely believe those truths, your expectations automatically align with the realities of the market. There's no gap for emotional pain to seep in. If you believe in an uncertain outcome, truth 1 and 5, and a random distribution, truth 3, then a losing trade doesn't feel like a personal failure or betrayal. It's just one of the expected random losses that statistically has to happen to get you closer to the next randomly distributed win.
So a loss actually becomes confirmation that your edge is working over the long run.
In a way, yes. It takes the sting out completely. You stop trying to predict the unpredictable, truth 2 and 4. You stop chasing trades or feeling like you missed out. When you deeply accept you don't know what will happen next, your mind stops that automatic process of making the now moment seem identical to some painful or euphoric past experience.
So the best traders are just present. They're in the now moment because there's no internal conflict.
Pretty much. There's no stress because the risk is always defined and accepted beforehand. They're not trying to be right. They're not trying to avoid being wrong. They're not trying to prove anything. They just execute their rules and accept whatever the market offers.
It's really a profound shift we've unpacked today. Trading or maybe engaging with any complex, uncertain system isn't about getting every single call right or having a perfect crystal ball. It's fundamentally a game of probabilities.
Exactly. And getting into the zone, that state of peak performance, it comes from accepting these psychological realities we've discussed, embracing the risk, letting go of those painful interpretations, which then unlocks access to all your skills and knowledge. It really comes down to being at peace with not knowing what's going to happen next. Because ironically, that's when your mind is most open to perceiving what is happening.
So the final thought to leave you with today, what might become visible to you in the market or in other parts of your life if you could truly let go of that need to know what's next? If you just made yourself available to the endless, unique possibilities of each moment, what crucial insights might still be invisible to you right now, just waiting for you to adjust your perception? We're really embarking on a fascinating exploration. We're going deep into the inner workings of your mind. Specifically, we're focusing on something incredibly powerful, but often kind of unseen, your beliefs. You've shared some really critical insights, particularly from the material covering the nature of beliefs and their impact on trading. Our mission today is to unpack these ideas, really pinpoint the core truth, and we'll reveal why understanding your beliefs is just absolutely essential, especially if you're aiming for, say, consistent success in dynamic fields like trading. And we're not just talking abstract psychological concepts here. No, we're talking about the very blueprint for how you perceive, how you interpret, how you act, and how all of that directly shapes your results. So to kick us off, where are we starting on this deep dive into the mental landscape?
Well, what's immediately striking in this material is the author's emphasis on a really crucial distinction. Simply understanding a concept, like, say, the 5 fundamental truths about trading. Well, that isn't enough to make it functionally useful. It just isn't. The real journey, the actual path to consistent success, that lies in integrating these truths, making them core beliefs so deep they don't clash with anything else you already hold.
Okay, that's a big point right there. Understanding isn't enough. Integration is key.
Exactly. And this raises a vital question, really, for anyone looking to optimize their performance. Why isn't understanding enough? It's because our minds aren't naturally wired for truly objective thinking or now-moment thinking, especially when probabilities are involved. So this means we have to actively train our minds. We have to work at it. And often when we do, we find these existing conflicting beliefs that can subtly, maybe even unconsciously, sabotage our best intentions.
That's powerful. The idea that understanding isn't enough, it has to be integrated. So if our existing beliefs can work against us, where do they even come from? The author talks about them as structured energy. Can you help us unpack what that means, practically?
Right. The core idea is, well, your reality isn't purely objective, it's constructed. Beliefs are basically concepts formed when pure sensory information. Think about what an infant experiences before language gets combined with words. Then, when positive or negative emotional energy from our experiences links up with these words or concepts, boom, they become energized. They solidify into beliefs about what's real, what's true for us.
So experience plus words plus energy equals belief.
In a nutshell, yes. For example, a child who consistently feels nurtured might link that positive feeling to the phrase, life is wonderful. And that becomes a deeply held, definitive distinction about their reality, a core belief. And this creates a really profound irony, doesn't it? These beliefs are absolutely integral to who we are. They dramatically impact our quality of life, happiness, satisfaction, success. Yet, they're often the least examined part of our psychology. We just don't think about them much.
Why is that? Why don't we examine them more?
Because a key characteristic of beliefs is that they make whatever we experience seem, well, self-evident. Like it's just obviously true, beyond question. It often takes, years of extreme frustration, something many traders can unfortunately relate to, before we even begin to consider that maybe, just maybe, our beliefs are the source of our difficulties.
Wow. So we're not born with them. And many of the really impactful ones were instilled by other people, often when we were way too young to even realize their potential negative implications. Yeah, that's a profound thought.
It is. And while figuring out the exact origin isn't always the main point, understanding how they operate is crucial. To really get their impact, think about how beliefs shape our lives. There are like 4 key ways. First, they manage our perception. They filter information from the environment to make sure it's consistent with what we already believe.
Okay, so they filter what we see.
Right. Second, they create our expectations. An expectation is really just a belief projected into the future.
Got it. Perception, expectation.
Third, they dictate our actions, our outward behavior, what we actually do. And finally, fourth, they shape how we feel about the results of those actions.
Perception, expectation, action, feeling. It's a whole cycle managed by belief.
Exactly. It's a complete system.
Now, to illustrate this, the author shares this incredible example from Chicago back in '87. A guy standing on Michigan Avenue holding a sign, "Free money, today only."
Yeah.
And he actually had cash to give away. What happened?
It's amazing, right? Almost no one took the money. I think only one person stopped, and they just asked for a quarter for the bus. That was it. Most people just walked around him, avoided eye contact. Some even muttered, "Not today," or something like that. And the guy offering the money, he was totally frustrated because people weren't reacting like he expected.
That's just wild. Why would anyone not want free money?
Well, the most compelling explanation comes back to belief. A really common, widespread belief is free money doesn't exist, or there's no such thing as a free lunch.
Oh.
So if you hold that belief deep down, that sign creates an instant contradiction in your mind, a conflict.
Okay, so the belief bumps up against reality.
Right, and your mind quickly resolves this conflict. How? By deciding the man must be crazy or dangerous, or maybe it's a scam, a trick. And that decision immediately leads to an expectation of danger.
Which leads to?
An action. Avoidance. You walk around him, you look away.
And finally?
A feeling. Relief, probably. Relief that you successfully navigated what your belief system flagged as a potentially risky situation.
Wow. All dictated by that one underlying belief.
Precisely. Now contrast that with the panhandler mentioned in the story. That person does believe in the possibility of free money. So their perception aligned with the offer.
Their action was to ask.
And their feeling was satisfaction. It all fits their belief system. Or think about that hypothetical what-if person, the one who gets intrigued. They maybe temporarily suspend their disbelief, their skepticism. They ask for $10.
And they get it. Elation.
Pure elation. But then...
But then the author notes that even that elation can quickly turn sour.
Yes. It can turn into regret if that person realizes, shoot, I could have asked for more.
So even getting something good can trigger a negative belief about missing out or not getting enough.
Exactly. It's truly eye-opening how a single belief can just orchestrate our entire experience, what we see, expect, do, and feel.
That free money example really drives it home, how one belief shapes the whole experience. But it makes you wonder, if everyone's reality, their truth, is so shaped by their individual beliefs, how do we figure out what the actual truth is? Is there one?
Yeah, that's a deep question, isn't it? It touches on some important philosophical issues.
Yeah.
The thing is, the environment around us, reality itself, it can express itself in basically an infinite number of ways. But our beliefs, by definition, they only represent a limited version of what's possible. They have to, right? They're specific filters.
Okay, so beliefs are limited maps of an infinite territory.
That's a good way to put it. Now think about this. If our beliefs were 100% accurate reflections of reality, totally perfect maps, then our expectations would always be fulfilled, every single time. And if our expectations were always fulfilled, we'd basically live in a perpetual state of satisfaction, no disappointment, no frustration.
Which clearly we don't, most of us, anyway.
Exactly. So the powerful takeaway here, if you're not experiencing satisfaction, if you're feeling frustrated, disappointed, stuck, it's a very strong indicator that you're operating from beliefs that, well, don't work very well relative to the environmental conditions. They're not useful maps for where you are or where you want to go.
So the truth isn't some absolute thing out there, but rather what works.
In this context, yes. The author frames it as, the truth is whatever works in relation to what you're trying to accomplish at any given moment. The usefulness of your beliefs, their ability to help you navigate reality successfully and feel satisfied, that's the real measure of their truth.
Huh. So satisfaction means useful beliefs. Frustration means not so useful beliefs. And it's not just about perception, it's the whole chain reaction. Interpretation, decisions, expectations, actions, feelings about the result.
A totally comprehensive system. Beliefs are running the show, often behind the scenes.
Okay, so if we want to change our results, especially in something demanding like trading, we need to work on these beliefs. The author outlines some core characteristics of beliefs, right? things that make them tricky, but also explain how we can work with them.
Yes, there are 3 primary characteristics discussed that are absolutely crucial for understanding how to reshape them, how to integrate those, say, fundamental trading truths. The first characteristic is that beliefs tend to resist any force that tries to alter their present form.
They fight back.
In a way, yes. The author describes them as conscious, structured energy. Think of it like a program running, or even like a living thing that wants to maintain itself. It has its own momentum. You can't just delete it or eradicate it. That goes against basic physics, right?
Yep.
Energy isn't destroyed.
So trying to just ignore a belief or argue it away forcefully, that might not work.
Often it backfires. It can make the belief defend itself, maybe even dig in stronger, like pushing against a spring.
Okay, so if you can't destroy belief, how do you change it? What's the mechanism?
The key concept here, the real breakthrough, is deactivation.
Deactivation, like switching something off.
Exactly. Think of it like draining the battery. You're not destroying the device, the concept itself, but you're removing its power source. You gently draw the energy out of the belief, rendering it inactive, non-functional. The concept might still be there in your mind, but without its energy, it can no longer act as a force on your perception or your behavior.
And the author uses that great Santa Claus analogy for this, doesn't he?
Yes, it's a perfect illustration. Think back to when you were, say, 5 years old. That belief in Santa Claus likely had a huge reservoir of positively charged energy.
Oh, yeah. Huge excitement. Writing letters, leaving cookies.
Exactly. It caused an instant, compelled reaction. It shaped your entire experience of Christmas. Now, fast forward. For most adults, Santa Claus is just an inactive concept. It holds no real energy.
Right. It's a nice idea, a memo, but it doesn't drive my behavior.
Precisely. You weren't destroyed. The idea of Santa wasn't destroyed. But the belief's energy was transformed. It was transferred probably to a new, more useful understanding of how presents appear.
Okay, I see. So the energy gets moved.
Yes. And that's a really powerful model for how we can approach other limiting beliefs, including those that might be messing with our trading results. We deactivate them by redirecting the energy.
Makes sense. So characteristic 1, beliefs resist change, need deactivation, not destruction. What's next?
The second characteristic is that all active beliefs demand expression.
Demand expression, what does that mean?
It means if something in your environment, or even an internal thought, taps into an energized belief, a kind of flood of energy is released. And that energy needs to go somewhere. It demands an outlet.
So even if you try to hold it back?
Even then. You might manage to hold back externally, like nodding politely at your boss when you completely disagree inside. But internally, that belief is still demanding expression. You're feeling the disagreement, the frustration, maybe replaying arguments in your head. The energy is active within your mind-body system.
Okay, that gets really interesting when our beliefs conflict with our own goals, like wanting to trade well but having conflicting beliefs.
Exactly. And the author points out something important here. Human consciousness seems to be larger than the sum total of everything we have learned to believe.
Meaning we can think outside our existing beliefs.
Yes. It allows for what he calls creative thinking. We're experiencing things that fall outside those established boundaries.
So what happens when we have one of these creative experiences that directly challenges a really deeply held belief?
Let's take the example of the boy who, maybe because he got bitten or badly scared, developed a belief that all dogs are dangerous. A very strong, negatively charged belief.
Okay, so he avoids dogs instinctively.
Right. But what if, one day, he accidentally stumbles upon some kids playing happily, safely, joyfully with several dogs? Maybe they're laughing, petting them.
That's undeniable information contradicting his belief.
Precisely. That's a creative experience. It's indisputable sensory data clashing with his internal map. What does this cause? First, probably confusion, maybe fear mixed with curiosity. Then perhaps a new desire starts to form. Maybe I want to interact with dogs like that too.
But it's not that easy, is it?
No, because the psychological dilemma is that his deep-seated belief, especially that powerful word all, still holds far more negative energy than his new tentative desire holds positive energy. That all can act like a paralyzing force. He might look at a specific friendly-looking dog and intellectually know it's probably not dangerous.
But he still can't bring himself to approach it. The fear is too strong.
Exactly. He's stuck. To overcome this, he needs to systematically deactivate that all. How? By having new positive experiences with dogs, maybe starting small. Each positive experience incrementally transfers energy away from the fear belief and towards the desire belief, until eventually the desire outweighs the fear. The author notes that many people grow out of childhood fears this way, often without consciously realizing they're involved in this energy transfer process.
Okay, and the connection to trading here is pretty direct, isn't it? You might intellectually grasp probabilities. You might know the theory, know that the next trade is just one in a series, unique outcome, edge playing out, yet you're still afraid. You hesitate. You can't pull the trigger on that next trade. Why?
Because the root cause of that fear is defining market information as threatening. Simple as that. And where did that definition come from? From your expectations. And where do expectations come from? From your beliefs. See the chain.
Yeah, it always comes back to beliefs.
Right. So if your existing beliefs are still arguing for something different, then thinking probabilistic, maybe they're still demanding that you need to know what's going to happen next, or that you absolutely must avoid any loss.
Yeah.
Then you will experience fear, stress, anxiety when faced with uncertainty, which is constant in trading.
So how do you escape that?
To truly think in probabilities without fear, you have to believe, functionally believe deep down, that every edge has a unique outcome. When you genuinely accept at a gut level that you don't know what is going to happen next on any single trade, there's simply no potential left to interpret random market information as threatening. The fear dissolves.
Because there's nothing to be threatened by if you expect uniqueness.
Precisely. You accept the uncertainty, and the author also gives the flip side of the dog example, right? The child who believes all dogs are friendly because they've only had good experiences.
Right, so they ignore warnings.
They discount potential danger. Then, if they do get attacked, that's a painful creative experience. But it probably doesn't flip them 180 degrees into fearing all dogs. More likely, the all dogs are friendly belief gets deactivated.
So they learn caution, discretion.
Exactly. They learn to distinguish. Now they can perceive both friendly signs and unfriendly signs. Their belief system becomes more nuanced, more useful. And that mirrors how a trader might encounter something totally unexpected in the market that forces them to adjust a previously rigid belief about how things always work.
Okay, so beliefs resist change. They demand expression. What's the third characteristic? You said it might be the most insidious.
Yes, the third one is this. Beliefs keep on working, regardless of whether or not we are consciously aware of their existence.
They operate subconsciously.
Exactly, like driving a car. Once you've learned, countless complex actions and judgments happen automatically, subconsciously. You don't consciously think about every single micro-adjustment.
So how does this apply to trading, especially if we can't even remember forming some of these beliefs? How can they affect us if we don't know they're there?
This leads us straight into the critical concept of self-valuation, your sense of self-worth. Think about it. The trading environment offers, theoretically, unlimited potential for wealth accumulation. Limitless opportunity.
Right, the sky's the limit, supposedly.
But your personal, internal sense of self-valuation, what you subconsciously feel you deserve or are worthy of, that might be quite limited. There could be a huge unseen gap between how much money you consciously desire
And how much you see is potentially available in the markets.
and how much you actually believe deep down that you are worth or deserve.
And these limiting self-valuation beliefs, where do they come from?
Very often, they're negatively charged beliefs acquired way back in childhood, and often forgotten consciously. For instance, maybe a child gets hurt doing something, and a parent, maybe trying to make sense of it or even discipline, says something like, well, this wouldn't have happened if you didn't deserve it.
Oof.
Or maybe something implying divine punishment. God punished you for being bad. These kinds of messages, even if not intended maliciously, can install deep, subconscious beliefs about being unworthy of success, happiness, or good things. Feelings of guilt about money, or maybe religious or family beliefs that having a lot of money isn't godly, or money is the root of all evil. These can all operate powerfully below the surface.
And so these hidden subconscious beliefs, they actually cause trading errors.
They manifest that way, yes. They express themselves. Often as things that look like simple mistakes or bad luck. Things like sudden lapses in focus or concentration just before a good setup. Or accidentally putting in a buy order when you meant to sell. Or repeatedly finding reasons to hesitate and miss out on big, obvious moves that fit your plan perfectly.
It sounds like classic self-sabotage.
It is. It's like there's a hidden program running in the background, subtly interfering with your conscious intentions and your skills, precisely because achieving too much success would conflict with that hidden belief about what you deserve. The author describes working with traders who were skilled, who consistently made money, but they kept hitting this invisible but a very real barrier.
A glass ceiling.
Exactly, a glass ceiling in their equity curve. Every single time they reached a certain level of success, boom, they'd experience a significant drawdown, a losing streak. And it happened regardless of the market conditions at the time. They'd often blame it on bad luck or the market suddenly turning against them.
But it was internal.
It was internal. He calls this hitting a negative zone, where these unresolved self-valuation issues mysteriously start acting on their perception and behavior, effectively capping their success.
Wow. So do you have to dig up and deactivate every single one of these old negative beliefs to succeed? That sounds daunting.
Thankfully, no. It would be overwhelming. The author suggests you don't necessarily have to deactivate every single one, but the absolute key is to become aware of their potential presence, to recognize the patterns, and then to take specific deliberate steps in your trading routine, in your mental management, to compensate for their influence when you notice them starting to express themselves. Building awareness is the first huge step.
What an incredible journey this deep dive has been, seriously. We've gone from how beliefs even get formed, this idea of energy and concepts, to how profoundly they shape everything we see and do, like in that mind-bending free money experiment, and then digging into why they're hard to change, how they demand expression, and finally, how these hidden subconscious ones can create that invisible glass ceiling in trading. It's a lot to take in.
It really is. And this whole discussion, it really underscores a fundamental truth, doesn't it? Every single moment, whether it's in the market or just in everyday life, it contains elements we know, things that fit our current beliefs.
Yeah.
But it also contains elements that are unique, unknown, maybe even contradictory to our beliefs. And until we actively train our minds to truly expect a unique outcome, to be open to that unknown element in every single moment, we will unconsciously continue experiencing only what we already know. We'll filter out, block, or distort everything else simply because it doesn't fit our existing map.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you, the listener, sitting here right now? What's the practical application?
Well, if you're not experiencing the kind of mental freedom you desire in your trading, if you find you're still struggling, maybe feeling fear or hesitating, despite understanding the technical side, despite knowing the probabilities intellectually, then it's really essential to take an active, deliberate role in training your mind, training it to truly believe in the uniqueness of each and every moment, each trade. And crucially, you must consciously work to deactivate any other belief you hold that argues for something different, that demands certainty or fears loss. Just like that boy needing positive experiences to overcome his fear of dogs, this internal rewiring process. It won't happen by itself. It requires conscious, focused effort.
So the secret to achieving that consistent success as a trader, it seems, isn't just about knowing the markets. It's maybe even more about mastering these invisible, powerful forces of your own beliefs.
That seems to be the core message. Master your mind, master your beliefs.
Absolutely fascinating. Thank you for joining us on this deep exploration into the nature of beliefs and their profound impact, drawing from that rich material on trading psychology. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning those assumptions, and keep diving deep into what truly makes you tick.
Toughest thing anyone tries to succeed at, trading. Our source material frames it, not just as analyzing charts and numbers, but something deeper. Exactly.
Yeah, this deep dive is all about unpacking why trading feels so uniquely hard sometimes. It's often less about raw intelligence, surprisingly, and more about learning to function when you just don't know what's next. It means managing your expectations and really truly internalizing 5 fundamental truths about markets. Our mission, really, is to explore how traders can sort of realign their whole mental setup for consistent results.
A whole mental realignment. Okay, that sounds big. And the source, it lays out this path, right? 3 distinct stages of development for a trader. Where does that journey kick off?
Yeah, it starts with the mechanical stage. This is really the foundation. Its purpose isn't just like blindly following rules. It's about building crucial skills, things like self-trust, which you absolutely need in this kind of unlimited environment, flawless execution of your system, whatever that system is, and thinking in probabilities, those 5 truths we mentioned, plus building this really unshakable belief that you can be consistent. The whole stage is designed to, well, almost force you to create consistent results.
Okay, compel you to consistency. I like that. So once you've built that solid mechanical base, where do you go? What's the next step?
Well, after you've really nailed that down, you can move to the subjective stage. This is where you get a bit more freedom. You can start using all that knowledge you've picked up about how markets move, but with more flexibility. And this is a big, but it requires really diligent monitoring. You have to watch out for trading errors because these often come from unresolved issues around self-worth or how you value yourself.
Valuation issues. So like how we feel about ourselves when we mess up, basically.
Exactly. That's a huge part of it, how your internal stuff interacts with, inevitable losses or mistakes. And then beyond that, you have the ultimate level, the intuitive stage.
Intuitive, like a sixth sense for the market.
Sort of. It's described as the most advanced level, kind of like getting a black belt. The interesting thing about intuition, though, is it's spontaneous. It doesn't come from your rational thinking. In fact, it often conflicts with what seems logical. So the real challenge there is setting up a state of mind where you can actually receive those intuitive signals and, importantly, act on them, even when your brain is saying, wait, no.
Wow, okay. From rigid rules to pure intuition, that's quite a journey. And it really sounds like crossing that bridge involves tackling your own psychology head on. The source makes it super clear. Consistency is psychological. It's about systematically getting rid of errors caused by fear, getting too excited, or those self-worth things. So how do we actually get these psychological skills? Are they things you learn?
That's the core of it, really. These skills are actually beliefs, deep-seated beliefs. If your main goal, your primary objective is consistent results, then you need to create a dominant belief, something like, I am a consistently successful trader. That belief then acts like this source of energy. It shapes how you see things, how you interpret market info, what you expect, and what you do. The problem is this new belief often clashes hard with beliefs you already have, maybe limiting ones. So yeah, transformation is necessary.
Transformation. Okay, so if we're going to transform, what's the very first practical thing we need to do?
Step one is observing yourself. And I mean really paying attention. Noticing your thoughts, the words you use, your actions. Because every single one reinforces some belief inside you. The goal is to become this objective observer of your own mind. No judgment, just watching. Now that sounds simple, but it can be incredibly hard. Most of us have learned, through painful experiences, that mistakes lead to feeling bad. So we avoid even looking at them.
Yeah, that avoidance thing is powerful. The source uses this great analogy, the Grand Canyon Bridge one. Your contract size is the width of the bridge. Tiny for a small trader, maybe 20 feet wide, but for a huge bond trader, it's like a thin wire. What does that tell us about focus and, well, the cost of mistakes?
Oh, that analogy perfectly captures the stakes, doesn't it? For that trader on the thin wire, a tiny misstep, like just one distracting thought, that's all it takes. A moment's lapse, maybe getting caught up in some internal conflict, and poof, they could miss their chance to get out of a position. Disaster. It just screams that focus has to be absolute. And the biggest trap, it's that human thing of not wanting to admit we messed up. Not because we're born that way, but because we've learned errors equal negative feedback, judgment, pain. Contrast that with truly great athletes. They don't fear mistakes. They see them as information, pointers for what to work on next. They lack that inner critic that just shuts so many people down.
Right, they use mistakes instead of being defined by them.
Exactly. So if you're facing that emotional pain from errors, the source basically gives you two paths. One, do the work, actively build new positive beliefs about mistakes, learn to see them as feedback, and at the same time, deactivate the old negative ones that beat you up. Or two, if you really don't want to go down that road, you can try to compensate. Trade only from the mechanical stage, but specifically without monitoring yourself for errors. Just follow the system blindly. But the source clearly favors path number one for real growth and mastery.
Okay, so path one, transforming those beliefs, involves self-monitoring. And for that, the source brings up self-discipline. What is self-discipline in this trading context? Is it something you either have or you don't?
No, definitely not something you're just born with. That's a key point. Self-discipline here is defined as a mental technique, a tool. It's how you consciously redirect your focus back to your goal, back to your desire, especially when some other belief you hold is trying to pull you off course. It's a choice, a skill you develop, not a personality trait.
A mental technique. I like that. It makes it sound learnable. The author shares their personal story about running, right? Going from deep depression, couldn't run 50 yards, to running consistently for 16 years. They had that 5-mile rule, just run one step further each time. What's the big takeaway there about discipline and changing beliefs?
That story is just brilliant because it shows exactly how beliefs work and how you change them. See, initially, his desire, I want to be a runner, had zero support in his mind. No existing belief backed it up. So he had to create experiences that were consistent with, I am a runner. Every single time he consciously refocused on his goal running, despite all those inner voices saying, stop, this is stupid, you can't do this. Every time he did that, he was adding energy to that new belief, I am a runner. And almost without realizing it, he was draining energy from all the conflicting beliefs. Eventually, running became easy, effortless even, because I'm a runner wasn't just an idea anymore, it was part of his identity. It shows how you shift energy between beliefs. What starts as a struggle becomes natural. And that right there is the whole point of trading mechanically at first. Use self-discipline to hammer in those principles until they just become who you are as a trader.
Until it's just part of your identity.
Right.
Okay. So bringing this all together for traders listening, the source lists 7 principles for being a consistent winner. What are these core principles?
Right, these are like the commandments of consistency. Let's list them out. 1, I objectively identify my edges. 2, I predefine the risk of every single trade, no exceptions. 3, I completely accept that risk, or I'm willing to just let the trade go, pass on it. 4, I act on my edges, without reservation, without hesitation. 5, I pay myself, meaning I take profits when the market makes them available. 6, I continually monitor myself the potential to make errors, that self-awareness piece again. And 7, I understand why these principles are absolutely necessary, and therefore I never violate them.
Never violate them. That's strong.
It has to be. Let's look at the first one. I objectively identify my edges. Objectivity here means seeing the market information for what it is without your emotional filters. No fear distorting things, no euphoria making you overconfident. To do that, you have to keep expectations neutral. You have to accept there are unknown forces, basically what every other trader might do. You got to think from the market's perspective, not just your own. The source warns the moment you think you know for sure what's going to happen next, bam, you create an expectation. And then any information that contradicts your expectation feels painful, which triggers your brain's pain avoidance tricks. That creates this illusion, this distorted view that leads to all the classic trading mistakes, freezing up, jumping the gun, not taking profits, taking losses too late. Those 5 fundamental truths about probability and uncertainty, they're the antidote. They keep expectations neutral, keep you focused on the now, on the opportunity flow, and that helps eliminate those errors.
Okay, so the principles and the truths work hand in hand. And to really bake this stuff in, the source gives this exercise. Learning to trade an edge like a casino. How does that work? How do we set that up?
Oh yes, the casino trader exercise. This is really where theory meets practice, psychologically. The whole point is to convince yourself, deep down, that trading is just a probability game, like running a casino. Individual outcomes, random, unpredictable, but over a whole series of trades. If you have an edge and you act on it consistently, you'll get consistent results. You become the house, basically. But only if you have that edge, think in probabilities using those 5 truths and execute flawlessly over many trades.
Become the house. So how do we actually build our casino?
Okay, setting it up involves a few key steps. And notice how each step forces a psychological confrontation. First, pick your market. It needs to be active, liquid. A stock or future where you can actually afford the margin for, say, 300 shares or 3 contracts. The point isn't the market itself, but choosing one where you can execute without financial stress interfering with your psychology. Second, define your edge. This has to be crystal clear. A system could be math-based, mechanical, visual pattern, doesn't matter, but the entry and the stop-loss exit variables must be absolutely precise. No room for subjective calls. 0. This forces you to trust the system, not your feelings. The market structure decides the exit, not, I think it'll go higher, or I can't take more loss. Third, time frame. Use whatever you want, but signals have to be consistent within that time frame. You can filter, like use a daily trend to only take 30-minute chart signals going the same way. That can maybe juice your probabilities a bit. Fourth, taking profits. This is often the hardest part psychologically. Greed, fear of missing out, all that stuff. The source suggests scaling out. Take, say, a third or a quarter off when the trade moves a predefined amount in your favor. Maybe it's 4 ticks in T-bonds or 1.5 points in S&P futures, whatever your system defines. And here's the crucial bit. The instant you take that first bit of profit, you immediately move your stop loss on the rest of the position right to your original entry point.
So you lock in a risk-free opportunity on the remaining part.
Exactly. And think about the psychological impact of that. Suddenly, there's no stress on the rest of the trade. No anxiety. You can think clearly about managing it. It's huge. The source also mentions aiming for like a 3-to-1 reward to risk ratio. That helps ensure you can be profitable, even if you only win, say, 40% or 45% of your trades. Fifth, Trade in sample sizes. This is critical. Forget judging yourself on one trade. Define success or failure over a batch 20 trades minimum, maybe more. This forces you to accept the randomness of individual outcomes and focus on the aggregate result. It accounts for market shifts too. And finally, testing and accepting the risk. You got to test your system, back test, forward test, whatever. Know your win-loss ratio over your sample size. And then this is maybe the most important psychological step. You must know the total dollar risk for your entire sample size. What's the absolute worst case? Losing on all 20 trades. Calculate that number. And you have to completely accept that potential loss. If it makes you squirm, you need to reduce your position size, maybe trade E-minis instead of full contracts, or use a simulator until you are genuinely comfortable with that worst case dollar amount. Without changing the risk parameters your system dictates, you accept the risk, you don't avoid it by messing with your stops.
Wow. Okay, that's a very deliberate setup process, forcing you to confront risk and probability head on. So once all that is meticulously set up, market, edge, exits, risk accepted, what's the day-to-day execution? What's the core rule?
The core rule sounds deceptively simple, but it's where the real mental battle happens. It is. Trade your system exactly as you designed it for at least the next 20 times your edge appears. Every single time. No skipping one because you have a bad feeling. No adding a trade because you feel lucky. No changing your stop or profit target mid-trade. Just execute. Perfectly. 20 times or more. Just like a casino. They run every hand of blackjack, every spin of the roulette wheel, according to their fixed rules and odds. They don't second guess. They trust the probabilities over the long haul.
Execute perfectly. 20 times.
Yeah.
I can see how that would cause some internal fireworks.
Oh, absolutely. The source says for most people, this exercise creates a head-on collision between your desire to follow the plan and all your conflicting old habits and beliefs. How hard it feels will be directly related to how strong those conflicts are. The advice is, monitor yourself constantly. Use that self-discipline technique to refocus when you feel pulled off track. Keep repeating the 5 truths, the 7 principles in your head. Acknowledge the conflict when it arises. Don't deny it, but act according to the plan anyway. Every single time you do that, every time you act in line with the truths and principles, despite the internal resistance, you're pulling energy away from those limiting beliefs and feeding the new ones. Eventually, the goal is that it becomes effortless. You just think and act consistently without the struggle. And you know you've truly integrated it when you can knock out a sample size of 20 plus trades without major difficulty, without resistance, without distracting thoughts derailing you. Only then, the source says, are you really ready for those more advanced subjective or intuitive stages?
That really brings our deep dive full circle today. It's pretty clear that consistent trading isn't about luck or some secret indicator. It's a deliberate and maybe quite challenging psychological transformation.
It really is. And the source leaves us with a great final thought, comparing it to practicing golf. It says, learning to be a consistent winner as a trader isn't any different than hitting 10,000 golf balls until the swing is just automatic, ingrained. It takes time, deliberate practice. That's how you acquire the skill. The ultimate aim is for consistency to just be a natural function of who you are, your trading identity.
A natural function of your identity. So as you listening reflect on all this, maybe think about this question drawn from an attitude survey in the source material. Which of these typical trading struggles might resonate most with you as a potential area for this kind of transformation? Is it maybe, do you often find yourself planning trades you never execute and executing trades you never planned? Or perhaps, do you feel compelled to make a trade because you are afraid that you might miss out? Just something to chew on as you continue your own journey. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.